All right, well, welcome everybody. So glad to see a lot of familiar names and a few new ones. We're so glad that you guys take advantage of our webinars that we do monthly. It's why we keep doing them because we keep getting participants. So today we do have Trevor Hunt with NRCS. He is in our state office. I'm going to swap it over to Sarah, let her introduce a few things about our program for the new people, and then we will let Trevor get started.
Thank you, Erin. So welcome everybody to Tennessee AgVOLs webinar. I'm Sarah Moffitt, the whole state Tennessee coordinator. But we got some new hires on hand, so we'll break it up again, and I'm excited for that in our next webinar. So for those of you that haven't seen this before, this is essentially who I am. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel. I retired in 2024. I'm dual military. My husband retired in 2025, special forces guy. We bought a farm in Maryville, where he's from, and we brought our kids home so they can finally have some roots. And essentially, our farm is Sword Supply Farms, anything from poultry to vegetables, and then goats into myotonic fainting goats because they're just fun. Watch yourself. They're just fun. My information's at the bottom. Please contact me. That's my cell phone number. And then if you want to go to our website, there's an actual link to our website that you can see a lot of the things that I'm about to cover. Go ahead, Erin. I'm sorry. So essentially, I want to talk to you about what we have available. So who and what is AgVOLs? AgVOLs is a nonprofit that has a NIFA grant that is to help vets in agriculture. And essentially, how we do that is we provide an internship program. And really, what we're looking for is those transitioning out of the service, those that have already transitioned out. And I don't care if you're a one contractor, you're a retiree, those that were in the military but now have gotten into agriculture, you are who we are looking for. And essentially, as a coordinator, I'm trying to hook you up with the secondary part of our program, a host farm. Those that have gone before you that are already into farming and that can train you and give you some of that hands-on experience. And so both, I'm recruiting interns, I'm recruiting host farmers. I go to field days and anything across the state to find you so that we can make those connections for both internships and then recruit those host farms, those that are already doing that. So if you're interested in either of those, please go to our AgVOLs page, click on that link, go to the intake form, and fill those out. So one, I have your information, and I can send you information and coordinate newsletter events and updates, but I can also specifically talk to you about being that intern close to your area or being a host farm so that interns can come out and train with you. Next slide. And then a couple other of our programs, so scholarships. And essentially, we used to cap this at 250, but now we'll work with you and your family member. The biggest question I get with the scholarship program is what's all included? If you go to TSU or you go to UT homepages or you see all of these classes about master classes, anything from horticulture to horses and farm management, any of those things, you contact us and we'll see what we can cover. If it's you, it's a family member that's a military member, it's your dependents. You know, I have a few individuals that their son or daughter is definitely interested in ag and it's their dependent. And they're looking to study that at school and they want to look at that master farmer, master manager class or master beef. So any of those things necessarily apply. What we're looking for is that you actually attend, know that this money is to go towards reimbursement of those programs for those different certifications. But contact us if you have questions with any of that. And then workshop program, like you're seeing this webinar right here. Other things that I try to do, because I'm also in Farm Veteran Coalition for Tennessee. If you're not in that, please do that. That's community and networking. But something I try to do is go to your farm and we host a workshop there. Maybe it's, building a fence. So we're helping that farmer build a fence, but at the same time, you're showing people how you build a fence, or a donkey run is something we've done, or just a lunch to have a discussion on VSO and benefits. So different workshops we're constantly looking at for ideas. And then Erin is putting on, because she works with UT Management Center for profitability, essentially she puts on all these business classes throughout the year and these webinars and to help walk you through your business plan and some of the discussions about finances and farming. And so you'll see this series. We try to post them, we try to record them, and we try to get it out to you. So those are the next slide. Those are like the basic 4 steps of our program. The other thing we do is we try to bolster you as a farm. And so right now we're supporting Tennessee State University as they put on their fourth Veteran Boot Camp. It's coming up. If you haven't registered, it's still a potential to do so. We'll be at TSU. The best part about these boot camps or new farmer academies are the farm tours. You get to actually go out to other farms and we kind of do a field trip out there to see some of this stuff in action. So if you haven't seen it, follow our Facebook page. Again, go back onto any of our websites to sign up and get on that intake form or register for each of these events. We also have a partnership with Tennessee AgriBility. She's not here tonight, but essentially, if you're a disabled vet, there's opportunities, there's adaptive technologies out there. And if this is of interest to you, please contact us, Eileen Legault, or just me, and I'll get you in contact with her. And there's some additional steps and assessments that can be done in your farm. And again, Farmer Veteran Coalition, as a plug for a community and a network of people. If there's any questions of me, I'm available. I'll be available now or even after. And then again, this is our website. There's going to be a survey. I'm going to hit you. Aaron's going to hit you with it, but we really need you to fill out the survey from this so that we have that quantifiable data so we can keep going. Back to you, Aaron. Trevor, thank you.
All
No
right,
problem.
thank you, Sarah. And a real quick plug, she, introduced what I do, and most of you all know I do everything that has to do with farm finances, budgeting, record keeping. We actually have an intern starting with us who goes to TSU, who is also, she specializes in business plan writing. So I'll send out information here soon, but in September, we are going to be booking like one-on-one Zoom sessions with people. Like you can just fill in a time slot that works for you, and we will help you work through your business plan, get budgets done for that, and just kind of help you really strategically plan. So stay tuned for that. But without further ado, I'm going to let Trevor take over. Some of you all might already know him. He was in Sumner County for a long time and really just did a fabulous job. A lot of my producers worked with him. And now he has moved up and he is in our state office. So he's got a lot of influence. He's a ton of knowledge with NRCS programming. So very excited to have him on.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Aaron. I truly appreciate the opportunity. I think we were talking beforehand, but Aaron and I, we go way back to Sumner County and working as a county level employees in Sumner County, and I was just reminiscing on some of those good days of us being together during that time frame. I am going to share my screen with you, and as Sarah had alluded to, some of you may attend the boot camp coming up in the next couple of weeks. And if you see me there, or if you hear this presentation, just act like this is going to be your first time hearing it. And I see Jay is on the call, and I know he's heard this a couple of times as we've been in various meetings together. But hopefully, this could be informative. And I'm going to cut my screen off. That way, I can just share my PowerPoint. And Aaron, if you don't mind, let me know once it is up.
Will do.
I'm gonna have to do this. Here we go. Are we good to go, Aaron?
Looks great.
All right. Okay. Well, a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Trevor Hunt, and I serve as the Assistant State Conservationist here in Tennessee, and my focus is on partnerships. I've been in this role, I've been with the agency for about 17 years now. Time flies when you're having fun, at least that's what the saying says. But I started my career in West Tennessee, in Weakley County. I'm originally from Carroll County, Tennessee, so West Tennessee, born and raised, and my personal operation is in West Tennessee in Carroll County as well. But I was so excited to hire on with NRCS back in my college days. I had an internship. I was so excited to get the internship that when it was time for me to hire on, I just signed all the paperwork and didn't even read the fine print. Somewhere deep in the fine print was a mobility agreement, and it said they can move me pretty much anywhere in the continental U.S. And they upheld their end of the bargain. They moved me around a couple of times, and I'll never forget. I was working in my local field office in Dresden, Tennessee, and my supervisor came by and said, "Trevor, if you want your check in 2 weeks, it's going to be in Jonesboro, Tennessee." I never heard of Jonesboro, Tennessee, but once I did a quick Google search, the first thing I saw was it was the oldest town in Tennessee, and all I could do was shake my head and think, "Oh man, this is gonna be rough." But oddly enough, I had the greatest experience of the earlier parts of my career in my time in Jonesboro and in East Tennessee, and some of the great people I got a chance to work with. From there, I was able to play a little bit of Burr Rabbit and work my way back to Middle Tennessee. I played hard to get, like I didn't want to move back to Nashville, but I was extremely excited to cover Davidson and Sumner County. And I served in that role as district conservationist for Davidson and Sumner for about 10 years prior to taking on the role of assistant state conservationist. In my role now, my primary goal is just to assist and work with strengthening our partnerships across the state of Tennessee. In addition to that, we also oversee all of our communications and public affairs, our grants and agreements, and then lastly, all of our urban agriculture activities. So, who are we? NRCS is a service-based agency, which we are meant to just help our ranchers and forest landowners make critical investments when it pertains to their operation. We just want to help people help the land and keeping, working lands and working hands is the new motto, and that's kind of where we want to focus our attention. From there, we're focused on being a voluntary, locally driven, science-based operation, meaning that we're a voluntary agency. And I'll get into that a little bit more as we go through the duration of the presentation. But the key word to our operation is that we're voluntary. Now, we help farmers and ranchers in a multitude of ways. Number one is going to be our one-on-one technical assistance. We offer free conservation planning advice to farmers wanting to implement conservation practices. We refer to them as best management practices. And again, that is free. So if you want a district conservationist or a conservationist from your local field office to come out to your farm or to your property, we can come out, walk the farm with you, and give you recommendations on practices that can be implemented on your property. Now, the one-on-one technical assistance is by far the most important thing that we offer, but the most popular thing we offer is our financial assistance. And so, during the process of providing technical assistance, if you decide that you would like to implement some of the conservation practices that we recommend, then there is an opportunity potentially for financial assistance. And I'll dig a little bit deeper into our methods of financial assistance later on in the presentation as well. But overall, we want to make sure that we provide science-based conservation, meaning that oftentimes a lot of our producers don't realize it, but in their own special way, they're scientists as well. Our farmers are the origins of science, and we make sure that we get feedback from our farmers and from other experts, and from those collectives of information sources, we provide that back to our participants. Now, when we talk about being locally driven, I'd alluded to that earlier, and I want to circle back around to that. The reason why we say we're locally driven is every every individual has the opportunity to partake in being a part of our local working group. The local working group is a panel of people within any particular county who come together and they discuss where they would like to see the emphasis on funding and programmatic assistance related to that individual county. So, for example, I live in Sumner County, and we've had a lot of stream bank issues as of late. And so, if I feel as though stream bank stabilization should be a priority for the funding within my particular county, then I can participate in the local working group to provide that feedback to the district conservationist, and then that district conservationist takes that back, and then that shapes the way the funding is set for any particular county. Anyone is invited to participate in the local working group. You just have to make contact to your local field office and let them know that that's something that you would like to participate in. Now, the second point is the voluntary participation. The reason why this is so important is I can't, or any NRCS rep, they can't make you do anything on your land. Literally, we have no regulatory authority in that regard. The beautiful part about it is that if I come out and I do a field visit on your operation, and you decide that you don't want to move forward with any financial assistance or accept the technical assistance that's provided, we can walk away, we can shake hands and be friends. And when you call me back in a couple years to come back out, look at the same thing, I'll smile and come right back. And there's no problem with that. And that is perfectly fine. It is 100% voluntary. And then the last point that I have under how we help is essentially putting American dollars to work. I like to let people know that this is a direct way that you can see your tax dollars being put to work and just funding in general, because this is meant to be funding to assist in the implementation of best management practices on rural land or on agricultural land. The goal of it is that we want to leave this land better than what we received it and be good stewards. And the funding that we provide is used directly for farm improvement. Now, I talked about the technical assistance and I mentioned the financial assistance as being the most popular, but I want to discuss how the financial assistance programs work. And so, number one, which is our flagship program, is our EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. And essentially, I like to look at this as almost like a good, better, best. Uh, when we come out to your farm and you have an operation intact, that's a good thing, and you're at a really good status. But the EQIP program is meant to take you from good to better. And essentially, we're looking at individual practices that can be done on your farm for improvement. So, for example, if you have a livestock operation and you are needing to um, implement a rotational grazing system because we want to reduce the compaction and the overgrazing on your pasture ground, then we can look into providing fencing, water and troughs, livestock pipeline, and things along those lines to help implement those individual practices on your operation. That's taking you from good to better. When we talk about the CSP program, I like to look at this as from better to best. CSP focuses on a suite of practices that can be implemented on your property. And essentially, rather than just have individual practices, this will be a holistic rotational grazing suite of practices or enhancements that can be done on the property. We also have the opportunity for our agriculture conservation easement programs, ASEP for short. And this supports landowners, land trusts, and other entities in protecting and enhancing our wetlands and protecting working farms through conservation easements. So if you have an interest in putting your land in an easement, then the ASEP program is definitely a viable option for that. Now, we also have watershed related programs. Number one being our emergency watershed protection program. And this is meant to essentially in federal emergency recovery program that helps communities after natural disasters. So essentially, when we have large scale disasters, we can come in and assist. The most recent, I would say, would be the Hurricane Helene cleanup. We did a lot of work post Hurricane Helene, whether it be stabilization work related to stream banks. We also have abutments with bridges and some of those different things. Now, the EWP program is not focused on necessarily individual farms. This is a whole watershed, meaning whole communities in a sense, whole counties in a sense. And so that is a more holistic program. Now, if you have issues that happen on your farm and it's localized to just your individual location, then the Farm Service Agency does have a program called the Emergency Conservation Program, ECP. And if you were, let's just say a tornado was to come through your area and high winds blow down some trees, and those trees are on your fence lines, then you could request assistance through the Farm Service Agency related to the Emergency Conservation Program, ECP. We also have watershed protection and flood prevention. And essentially, when we look at a lot of those watershed dams of old, we have not built any of these dams as of late, but of old, there's a lot of um, large scale ponds and retaining areas that would fall under that criteria. And then lastly, we have rehab, the watershed rehabilitation program. And this works through project sponsors. This is going to be more so on a large scale. This is not going to be for smaller or individual operations, but nonetheless, it is a program for watersheds. Lastly, we have partnership programs, and the first is going to be our Regional Conservation Partnership Program, RCPP. And this is a partner-driven approach, and essentially what we're looking for are partners who are wanting to do conservation work on a large scale. So, for example, let's just say that there was an entity that came in and said, "Hey, I'm concerned about excessive nutrients that are going into the Cumberland River." They could say, hey, we want to do a multi-county plan that will install or that would push for variable rate application of nutrients. And that would be something that would be done on a larger scale. So the Regional Conservation Partnership Program kind of speaks to the larger nature of it. There can be multi-state participation within this. And this is just a larger plan. And then lastly, we have the CIG program, which is the Conservation Innovation Grant. If you have a new tool or you develop some technologies that you feel like could be implemented on a larger scale, then we always encourage people to sign up and apply for the Conservation Innovation Grant that will allow you to have funding for us to be able to adopt some of these new tools and approaches or technologies related to agriculture and the conservation and the conserving of our natural resources. Now, that is essentially a high-level overview of all of our individual programs and opportunities that are available. But I want to speak directly to the EQIP program, and I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint here, and I'll cut my camera back on. And Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to leave ample time for some questions and just kind of some back and forth dialogue between the participants. But to kind of give a little bit more feedback related to the EQIP program, um, I guess if we could, I don't know if we can do a show of hands or a thumbs up. How many do we have on the call that are familiar with the EQIP program? If you, we got a couple of thumbs up. So with the equip program specifically, I want to talk about how you can actually go through the process of being selected for funding and essentially the background work of that. With the equip program, you can go into your local field office, you can fill out an application, and from that application, we will go through the process of setting up a field visit to actually verify and visit your farm and kind of make sure that the programs and practices that are on your property will be ideal for this program, for the EQIP program. From there, we will begin a process of ranking your application. Now, the reason why I want to go a little bit more in depth into the ranking process is because there's oftentimes a lot of confusion about the ranking process. So I want to give you an example. Let's just say we have two producers who live side by side. You have farmer A and farmer B. Um, Both of their properties border a waterway. So let's just say they both border the Tennessee River. Producer A wants a watering trough. So he comes in and he asks for a watering trough. We accept his application. We let him know that we'll pay X amount of dollars towards that watering trough, and that is Farmer A's application. Farmer B puts in an application, but Farmer B puts in an application for a watering trough, fencing that will be implemented to have rotational grazing. And they say, in exchange for you guys giving me this watering trough, I'm also going to exclude my livestock from this waterway from the Tennessee River. And just to put a cherry on top, I'm really into pollinators, and so I'm going to plant a quarter acre of pollinator habitat. All right. When it comes time to rank farmer A's application versus farmer B's application, which one do you think is going to probably win out between those two? Farmer B every time. All right. So farmer B's application is going to rank higher than farmer A's application. Now, that's not to say that you just need to fill your application up with practices that you really don't want. You just want to get into the program. That's not an ideal way to look at it, because I can also tell you that with some of these conservation practices, there's work that has to be done with those things. And so if you really don't want to manage for invasive species, then I would not put brush management down as an application that I would want to do, or that I would commit to doing. But I do want to make sure that you are aware that that is essentially what the ranking process looks like. There's also some other factors within that, such as just geospatial information. Your farm may be located in a area that is highly susceptible to erosion. And if you're doing an erosion practice and the geospatial information lets us know that this area is highly susceptible, then there's a chance that this application may rank higher just because of the imminent impact of the application. And so that is a factor. Now, essentially, once we have a ranking deadline, once the ranking deadline passed, we can see all of our applications and how everything is essentially ranked. Once that happens, we receive funding from each individual county will receive funding from our state office. And essentially, we fund as many applications as we can. So, for example, in Sumner County, if I was going to get somewhere near $500,000 a year, I would start from my highest ranking application. I would just work my way down until I ran out of funding. And essentially, once I ran out of funding, I would go back to the state office and beg and say, hey, if y'all just give me another $100,000, I can fund another 4 contracts. And you go through the process of asking for additional funds, and sometimes it's accepted, sometimes it's not, depending upon what the funding availability is at the state level. Now, I was just in a event last week, and someone had asked me, is there a ideal time to submit an EQIP application, or any application that is? And the answer to that is yes and no. Now, the reason why I say yes and no, there's not necessarily a perfect time, because we accept applications year round. So literally, there's never a time where you can say, I want to apply for EQIP, and they tell you, I can't take your application right now. But we do have what's called batching dates. That means there's a date and a period where we take all the applications that we have as active applications at that period in time, and we batch them all together. We rank them against one another, and we fund that batch of applications. And then we will move to the next batch. And the batching date is usually sometime around November 15th or so. And don't hold me to that date, because that date does change. November 15th last year, I think we were still on shutdown. And so, that date can certainly change, but it is just a good practice of every year, October 1, making sure you have an application on file, because that starts our next fiscal year. Someone asked me at the same meeting I was at last week, they asked me, they have put in an application and they haven't heard back as to whether or not they have been funded or not. And the reason why is I cannot tell you, or district conservationists cannot tell you that you have not been accepted for funding until the end of that fiscal year. The reason why is because there's money always floating in the system. And the last thing I want to do is say, hey, you were not funded for this program. And literally the next day we get additional funding and there's funding available, but you've already implemented or done something with it because you thought that you weren't going to get funded. So literally, we won't give you a denial until the end of the fiscal year. And that's the only way we can guarantee that there's not going to be any additional funding available to participate. So with that, that is a high level overview of NRCS and our EQIP and CSP program, which is going to be our most common programs. But I will open the floor up just for any questions And we have a crowd to where we can actually do some individual questions related to your own operation if you want to ask me questions about your operation.
And feel free too to put questions in the chat box and me or Sarah will read them out. So Trevor, I know I've got one question that may pertain to some people on here, but what would you say? I know the eQuip program is probably your most popular, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
And so what elements of that? Okay, good. Someone's actually asking a question on this. I was going to ask, someone's asking about the high tunnel
Okay.
program.
Okay.
So do you mind kind of explaining that process?
Yeah. So the oftentimes I hear people talk about the high tunnel program, the high tunnel initiative, and that was I can tell that information has come from someone who's been around the block for a while because those initiatives were kind of early on in the piloting of the high tunnel. We've since fully have adopted the high tunnel structures, and those practices are viewed just like any other agricultural practices, but specifically for the high tunnel practice, and this is kind of getting a little bit more in depth in that. And Aaron, you can stop me if I'm getting too in the weeds with this, but there's a couple of facts that I want to make sure that you are aware of, anyone who's applying for a high tunnel. The goal of a high tunnel is to address a resource concern. The most common resource concern addressed with a high tunnel is going to be the extension of your growing season. All right. So we have a concern about the health and vigor of your plants related to the growing season. We can do a high tunnel or a low tunnel that will extend the growing season. A lot of those high tunnels come in kind of standardized sizing. When I was in um, Sumner County, we did a lot of work with an outfit out of Kentucky, and most of their high tunnels were going to be built 30 by 96. And that was just the general spacing of it. I think there's another outfit that does 15-foot width, and they can do essentially by whatever length you would like to do. I say that to say that we can only provide a high tunnel based off of the square footage that you already have in production. So if we come out to your farm and you only have um, 300 square feet in crop production, then we're limited to 300 square feet of a high tunnel because the resource concern is only on the footprint of what you're growing. Right. So that is a caveat to the high tunnel system, and the way that we go through the process of making delineation of how much we can pay. Now, the process um, of getting a high tunnel on your fields, essentially, it would just simply be have a resource or district conservationist come out, and they will do a measurement of your crop production. And then from there, the resource concern is going to be the extension of your growing season. And then from there, we'll put the application in based off what that footprint is, and you'll be eligible for high totals over that footprint of what you're growing. And Retreat at Hope Farm, I hope that kind of answers that question related to, and I see over small fields, so I'm assuming you're referring to just smaller acreage operations and high tunnels in that sense. All right. And I also see a question from Thomas Bradley. What are the obligations after the project is complete and the funding has been received? So most of our contracts are going to be between 3 and 5 years in length. Now, the reason why this is important is because we essentially give you a year or so to get the practice implemented, and then you'll have a year of operation and maintenance. And then the third year is if, for worst case scenario, something happens and we have to push the contract out a little bit, it gives us a little bit of wiggle room for us to make sure that we have enough time and we don't run out of time within the contract. Now, essentially the obligations post the implementation of the practice is really limited. As long as you are utilizing the practices for the intended purpose, then there's no additional obligation outside of that. You know, we may come out and do spot checks just to make sure everything is still intact and is still being utilized. But outside of that, there's really no obligations beyond just making sure that the practices is being used in an ideal fashion. Now, If for some reason things happen, let's just say you come out and we have put in 1,000 feet of fencing and pipeline on your property, and Walmart comes in and says they give you an offer that you choose not to refuse and you sell the property. Well, if that's the case, we'll probably come after the money that we put into the practices that were installed because it was not used for the intended purpose. But if Walmart's coming in to buy your land, you'll have enough money to pay back the pennies that I gave you for your fencing. But generally speaking, unless there's something where you just completely go away from the practices as they were installed, then essentially there's no additional applications outside of that.
So
Oh,
Trevor, quick question, because he kind of followed up with a question, and I think I know where he's coming from. So like with TAEP for and you know TAEP, but let's say
mhm.
you get a hay barn, and I want to say it's like 3 years. Um, you have to use it specifically as a hay barn,
It's
and
five
then
years.
is it 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Trevor, this is
So
Thomas from CAEP, actually. I met you at the Ag Club
Yep.
days
Oh,
over there.
you sit behind me every time. I know you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, as far as the requirement, as far as like, just time requirements, after 3 years within the contract, there's really a cutoff period of what we have to actually come back after finances, which will be whatever the duration is of the contract that you sign. Now, I say that, but at the same time, we do have lifespans on the practices that we install. So, for example, if you put in a fence and there's a lifespan of 25 years on that fence, if we come back after year 3 or 4 and that fence has been torn down, we will not pay for additional fencing because we are saying that the fence that we provided initially should still be functioning with proper operation and maintenance. Now, if there's been an act of God, something on a large scale, a tornado has come through and has damaged all these things, well, then that's a justifiable reason for us to come back and provide additional assistance. But outside of that, there's no additional time requirement outside of the scope of the contract that you would have with NRCS that you would sign at the time of funding.
That answers my question. Appreciate it.
Mhm. All right. So Mark asks, do you have to profit as a farmer to qualify for these programs? A beginning farmer might not have any profits. Mark, our goal is strictly based off conservation. I do not look at P&L statements or even look at the size of your operation when making the determination as to whether or not you are eligible or whether you should receive funding. So there's no profit requirements for participation in any of our programs.
so to add to his question, so if someone were to want to do a program through you, do they have to show a Schedule F or anything like that?
No, but there when you saying schedule F kind of triggers something to my remembrance, and I do want to speak about there's opportunities for additional assistance. If you fall into the category of a beginning farmer, someone who has farmed less than 10 years, the way we would ask for a person to prove that is that you would have to show a tax return within that time frame that does not have a schedule F on it, and then that's how we would delineate you as a beginning farmer.
Perfect.
Now, there's also a question related to what are the application requirements. So, to be eligible to participate in this program, you have to be registered with the Farm Service Agency. And in doing so, you would just go to your local office, you would give them a copy of your recorded deed, and they would take your information. And then from there, you will be registered with the Farm Service Agency, which is free of charge, and now you meet the requirements for submitting an application. And we'll even take the application before you get the finalization of that farm and tract number. But before we can actually go into contract, we would have to have that requirement of being registered with the Farm Service Agency. In most counties, the Farm Service Agency and NRCS are co-located, so you would just go from one side of the hall to the other.
And can you explain to them what it would take to be registered like as a farm with FSA, like how that works?
Yeah, so one cool fact is there is no size requirement to registering your operation. You can be as small as one tenth of an acre and be eligible to receive a farm and tract number. You would just need to show either ownership or a lease agreement for said land. And then from there, there's some additional paperwork related to highly erodible land determinations, as well as adjusted gross income requirements. If you make over $900,000 on an annual basis over a 3-year period, meaning consecutively or average of that over a 3-year period, then at that point you would have to request waivers or things along those lines to be a part of the program. So there is an income cap, meaning that if you make over that threshold, then you wouldn't be qualified, and that number is somewhere over 900,000. You do not need a business plan, but a business plan is always a great resource and tool to have. A lot of the business plan requirements are going to go towards the Farm Service Agency, which is going to be a requirement for some of their loan products. And so I'll always recommend that you have a business plan or you work towards that, but that is not going to be a requirement for participation in our programs.
One more question. I'm thinking of questions as you're talking. So can you explain the difference or how it works if you're leasing land versus if you own the land? Is there a difference in how you apply?
Yeah, so you would need if you are leasing the land, the application process is going to be the exact same, with the only difference being that you would have to provide us with a lease agreement for the duration of the contract. So if our contract is 5 years, then you would need to have a 5-year lease agreement. And this is just stating that you have control of said land for the duration of our contract. And we will also require additional signatures from the landowner just to make sure that they are actually aware that, hey, Aaron is going to put a permanent structure on your property, and we want to make sure you're aware of that. They'll be responsible for these 5 years, but after those 5 years are over with, we want to make sure that you're okay with the structure or whatever the practice is still being there. So that's the only difference when you have leased land versus land ownership.
Okay, perfect. And in most of those instances, we're just seeing a lot more people having slash needing to lease land instead of purchase because
Oh
of the
yeah,
prices.
yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you typically see that relationship between the person leasing and the owner as far as paying for these structures? Because, in a lot of cases, NRCS isn't paying for it 100%. You're getting like a certain amount per square foot or like
Mhm.
fencing, whatever. How do you typically see that relationship work?
So a lot of times it depends on the practice, and it depends on how good the farmer is at communicating this program to the landowner. There's been several times where I would have the landowner come into the office with the leaser of the land, and the farmer will come in. It'll just be a three-way conversation, and essentially the farmer will be saying, "Hey, tell him it's not that bad, and that it's a good idea," and we kind of go from there. But essentially. If there's a practice that's going to have some type of conservation benefit for the landowner, generally they're willing to allow this to take place. When a farmer is asking to install watering troughs on a piece of property, one, they're asking so they can implement rotational grazing, which improves their herd health. But two, this is a upgrade to the farm. So the landowner stands to have a benefit from this as well. Now, when it comes to the financial part of things and kind of how that works out, as a federal agency, we don't get involved with how you choose to trade in that regard, but we are very transparent with the numbers. We make sure that you are aware of what our financial assistance will be before we enter into a contract. And then from there, if you choose to share that information with your contractor or the farmer or the owner, it's within your rights to do so. But we do not step in when it comes to the trading portion of that business transaction.
Okay, perfect. That'll kind of help me answer some questions that I get when it comes to that.
Yeah. And there's a local field office or there's a local representative that covers every single inch of Tennessee. And so if you are located in Tennessee, you have a local field office and a local field office rep that wants to work with you directly. Um, that is one of the benefits of the work that we do, that, you'll always have coverage. Now, there are some counties that have closed offices, and generally you just go to the neighboring county. For example, if you're in Davidson County, you would go to Sumner County, to Gallatin, for your NRCS assistance. And there's other counties like that we have closed locations, and you would just go to the neighboring county. But all that information is definitely available. Mary, you asked for a copy of the slides. I will send these to Erin, and then she can distribute them as she chooses.
All right. Any other questions for Trevor while we've got him? A lot of good questions.
Hey, Trevor, I have a comment and a question.
All right.
So someone that's actually helping an individual, my father, participate in this equip program.
Mm-hmm.
One of my experiences is that you talked about the badging being in November. I think it's in people's best interest, if you are doing multiple things with your application, is to start early. You're going to have a lot of people come visit your farm, maybe multiple times depending on your projects. For example, we had a forester come inspect for invasive privet.
Mm-hmm.
And that took a while to get him on our schedule. And we have another engineer coming out for some soil erosion. And then our local NRCS agent's going to come out. So this process is not impossible. It takes a little bit of time and planning. So that's something just to think about.
That is absolutely great advice. There's literally no issue with starting early. Go ahead and get the application in. Let's get the ball rolling, because a conservation plan is oftentimes a living document. And things change as we kind of go through the process. We find different areas and different methods that we may want to address it. And to Thomas's point, there may be some specialists that are involved. You may have a unique scenario related to, an invasive species that, we may want to target, but we may want to target a multitude of ways, and that requires a specialist to give us that feedback. So it's always good to err on the side of caution and apply early and not wait until the last minute to get that application in. Sarah requested that I clarify the topic about new and beginning farmer versus the 10-year status to qualify for some programs. And so this is a great question, because this is a question that has oftentimes left people somewhat confused. And as a veteran, once a veteran, always a veteran, in the sense of your service. They can't take that away from you. Now, when it comes to the definitions and the way we provide terms, there is a little bit of a nuance to that. And oftentimes it's related to the 10-year status. The 10-year status is referring to what qualifies you as a beginning farmer. And as a beginning farmer veteran, there is a 10-year period in which that we are focusing on those that have been discharged within the last 10 years and have not filed a Schedule F for 10 years consecutively. That is what qualifies you for the additional cost share rate. And there is a 10-year window there. Now, if you are a farmer who is a beginning farmer, but you have been discharged over 10 years, don't stress about the beginning veteran status, because you are still a beginning farmer and you will qualify for the increased payment rate. So let me make sure I say that again. If you are a farmer and you served in the Vietnam War and you have been long discharged from service, and you just decided 2 years ago that you want to farm, although you may not be considered a beginning veteran, you are still a beginning farmer, and therefore you will qualify for the additional cost share. And so I say that to say that sometimes the wording of things may not always be ideal. So if you come in and it's been more than 10 years, the district conservationists will say you no longer qualify as a veteran farmer, when in reality the verbiage should be you no longer qualify as a beginning farmer that is also a veteran. But you're still a veteran and you're still a farmer. But that additional payment rate related to being a beginning farmer will not be there if it's outside of that 10-year window.
And other programs may then kick in that you just have
Yeah.
to look at as a veteran
Yep.
outside of that. Perfect. Thank you so much for that.
Hmm. And you still qualify for all of the EQIP and CSP programs regardless. It's just that additional percentage of assistance is only going to be reserved for beginning farmer veterans. Well, Sarah and
Um,
Aaron, I thank y'all for allowing me to come in and speak. And again, I hope this is not a one-time thing. If there's ever questions that may pop up, or if you have a speaker, just call out the last minute. You can always tag me in. I'm always willing to come and speak, especially for someone I've worked with in the past and for entities such as yourself. So again, I'm appreciative. And Aaron, you can feel free to share the PowerPoint slides when I email them
Perfect.
to you, as well as contact information if anyone has any follow-up, or if someone is too shy to put in the chat or to say anything, you can always reach out to me directly.
One last question. So let's say if someone's NRCS office is in between people, or because we've had a lot of movement in Sumner County, for example,
Mhm.
and so agents or temporary agents will kind of come and go, and it can make the application process a little bit more difficult just because you're having those people transition through. Um, who would be the best person to reach out to during that transitional period?
So I would say that, there's usually going to be district staff that's there. When we speak about Sumner County, Miss Debbie Rippey,
Yes, yes.
she's a longtime staple there. And so it's always good to stay in communication with some of those district staff and those partner staff throughout the transition. But we should start to see some stability as we begin to backfill some of these positions with longer term details. So I think we should start to see a little bit more coverage in those areas, and specifically for Sumner County. Of course, I'm biased because that's the county I came from, but we should start to see some detailees start to fill those roles, and you start to see more long-term fixes to those vacancies.
Okay. And yes, people like Miss Debbie, we can't replace them. They're amazing.
Oh no,
So
no, no, not definitely not Miss Debbie.
all right. Well, thank you so much, Trevor. Again, I will get the slides from you. I'll also send out a recording. And I do want to remind everyone, I'm going to share my screen. I know surveys are not fun. None of us like to do them, but this is a grant. And in order for us to stay funded and keep doing things like this, we do have to have feedback from our surveys. So if you don't mind just either following the link, or you can just use your cell phone, scan that QR code and fill that out, that would be amazing. And Sarah, did you have anything we needed to add?
No, thank you all for attending. And Trevor, we'll see you soon.
All right, see you all. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Trevor.
you.